Hi everyone. I hope everybody is staying safe and healthy during these unprecedented times. It's good to see everybody virtually, even though I can't see you, but you can see me. So my topic in my presentation is how to run group therapy sessions for adolescents with social anxiety disorder or SAD. Please bear with me. I'm trying to be super tech savvy and record me and my screen so you guys can follow along with me at the same time. So hopefully we won't run into any barriers, but if we do, just please bear with me. All right, so social anxiety or SAD. Amongst all their mental health disorders that we see, anxiety disorders have affected the greatest number of children and adolescents. Some anxieties and fears are typically normal during certain developmental periods. However, sometimes these anxieties can exceed these developmental periods and then significantly impact how these adolescents are functioning at home, at school, with their peers, etc. In the DSM-5, it defines the essential features of social anxiety disorder as a marked and persistent fear of social or performance situations in which embarrassment may occur. So now I just want to go into a little bit about cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. It's received a significant amount of attention and empirical support for treatment for SAD. It works under the assumption that anxiety consists of physiological, cognitive, and behavioral components, and CBT typically involves teaching skills that address all of these components. So the components used in treatment of SAD specifically, we're going to briefly go over them. The first is psychoeducation. So treatment for SAD typically begins with the psychoeducational component, in which information is provided about SAD and anxiety, and it's discussed as a normal response so that the individuals are aware and are becoming knowledgeable about this. Next, we have systematic desensitization. So it's a widely taught cognitive behavioral skill, and it targets physiological symptoms of social anxiety, and then training and relaxation strategies. So clients will typically develop a hierarchy or a list of feared situations from moderate to extreme, and then they'll slowly go up this hierarchy, exposing themselves one by one and gradually working their way up to their more extreme fears. Next, we have relaxation training. So individuals are provided and instructed on how to do progressive muscle relaxation. They're instructed to practice the relaxation about 20 to 30 minutes a day. Daily over a few weeks' time, and gradually research has shown that they do become more relaxed over time. Next is rational emotive therapy, or rational emotive behavioral therapy, also known as REBT. So this assumes that emotional problems like anxiety are caused by irrational thinking and mistaken assumptions. And what basically happens is the irrational and negative thoughts are identified, and then they're actively disputed, and then they're replaced with more positive and realistic and rational patterns of thinking. So an example of that would be, nobody likes me, but that would become, not everyone likes me, but so-and-so does like me. So really working on those irrational thoughts. The last component that I want to discuss for this section is social skills training. So social skills training has been used as an intervention for socially anxious adolescents. It offers a more practical intervention tool to increase their ability to deal with social situations that they're going to encounter on a daily basis. So now we're going to move into the group therapy process for adolescents. So the first process that we're going to talk about is discovering similarities. So group counseling can help these adolescents discover that they're not unique in their struggles, and that other people or individuals are experiencing the same type of things that they're experiencing. Next is developing these social skills. So we talked about how they're a component. So now I want to talk a little bit about how they're going to be developed. So when they're interacting with each other in a group situation, inevitably their interpersonal behaviors are going to come out. And then this gives a chance for the leaders and other group members to provide them with feedback. And this will ultimately assist and improve their interpersonal relationships if they're working on these skills in the group therapy session. So I wanted to go over really quick fears that impact an adolescent enrolling in group therapy. So they could not want to enroll for, a couple of reasons. The first is they're suspicious of anything that is recommended to them by an adult, a figure in school, or a parent. They might have fears that the therapist will interrogate them and tell them what to do. And lastly, they could have fear that they'll encounter someone that they know and that they'll be stigmatized because of it. So getting the anxious individual to therapy. So in the research that I've, did for this project, one article, a lot of this information is based off of, because it was super thorough, regarding group therapy for adolescents with social anxiety disorder. It talks about how to get the anxious individual to therapy. So they talk about pre-group contacts with adolescents. This isn't like the pre-group meeting that you would do before the actual group therapy session started, but this is a meeting that they suggest maybe going to the family home, and that it's, a crucial foundation point to help with that working alliance between the therapist and the adolescent. So they talk about, information that the therapist should want to, keep in mind and discuss with the adolescent in this pre-group meeting is how the adolescent can benefit from the group, what actually happens in the group, what's special about the group, and what the purpose of the group is. So I don't want to go too into detail about this, but I did just want to bring up instruments and assessments. So it typically includes a multi-method approach, and information about the child is gathered through a variety of informants and through multiple contexts. So through teachers, peers, parents, the child themselves is, how they're going to be assessed, and how clinicians are going to figure out, what instruments they're going to be using with those adolescents. So, as I mentioned before, a big part of this presentation is based off an article that I found, and it's actually used social anxiety disorder and then the group therapy stated as curriculum. So it showed 10 lesson plans for 10 weekly sessions. We're going to get into that a little bit later. So as you can see down here, one of the major themes of SAD is the lesson plans, for these group therapy sessions. So the first theme, though, that we're going to talk about is group screening. So it involves an interview style, and you're meeting this prospective adolescent. The parent and the adolescent will attend the screening, and then you as a facilitator will determine if the adolescent is compatible with the group. The next theme regarding SAD and group therapy is the ethical consideration component of it. So that informed consent, the expectation of a group facilitator. So if you're going to run this group with CBT, the clinician has to have great expertise and training in this area, and regarding helping parents and youth with effective behavioral changes. The next part of the ethical consideration, sorry, I should be using my mouse instead of pointing to the screen, is supervision. And then this is advised that the facilitators spend time debriefing with either each other or a supervisor. Expectation of group participants. So group members, should be voluntary, and they want to be there for each session. They're encouraged to participate to what they're able to participate, and, they're going to maintain that confidentiality of all the group members like we've discussed in class. Assessment of client satisfaction. So a feedback form needs to be distributed weekly at the end of the group program to help with the co-facilitator debriefing and those conversations that you might have with your other facilitator or supervisor. Lastly is group structure. So as I mentioned before, the article really breaks down about 10 sessions for group therapy regarding adolescents with SAD. In those 10 sessions, it has a pre-group and a post-group session that they break down and tell you exactly how to run it and things like that. The article also suggests a parent meeting because usually or sometimes parents might not have a good understanding of the impairments or the symptoms that come along with anxiety. So this would be a really good time to provide them with that psychoeducation to really help them understand what their child could be going through. The third out of the 4 themes that, like I said before, we're talking about is group marketing. This doesn't apply too much as a school, but I thought it was important to put it in here because, I took so much of this information from the scholarly document. In a school, you wouldn't really have to market your, your population, who might need this group. So you kind of go off of that. This might go into play, the group marketing piece regarding like maybe a clinical environment. So now what we've all been waiting for is the lesson plans. So as mentioned before, this article breaks down 10 group therapy sessions for adolescents with SAD, a pre and post group. We'll go into it in a second, but it shows objectives, how to, prepare for these sessions. It breaks it down minute by minute. These 15 minutes, you should do an intro. These 40 minutes, you're going to do this assignment with them or this icebreaker and, so on and so forth. We're not going to go over it all because, we'll be here all night. As you guys can see, it's 24 pages long, but, you go over it with your leisure. You can adapt it the way I did, whatever works for you. So the pre-group session, as I mentioned before, we have the objectives here. So what you're hoping the individuals in your group are going to learn from. Advanced preparation, so what you're going to do in order to prepare for this first lesson. And then, as I mentioned before, how it breaks it down. So 10 minutes an introduction, 40 minutes discussing what group therapy is and an overview of the program. It shows you when to refer to certain forms like the informed consent, or maybe you're going to have a group therapy information sheet to share and discuss with these individuals. It provides you with facilitator debriefing questions, as I mentioned above, regarding the ethical theme of group counseling with SAD. And then it also gives you a feedback form. So it really goes into, a lot of detail. And as I mentioned before, this is all adapted from an article that I'll show you guys at the end in case you wanted to look up more info. So group session 1, group formation, again, objectives, how to prepare. I went through the lesson plans and I kind of made them broader and more adaptable to us. So even if maybe you weren't running a group session regarding adolescents with social anxiety disorder, you could still definitely use this. Or if you can't use any of the specific activities or questions, at least as a guideline of how to set up certain sessions. So for example, like right here where it says icebreaker activity, they had a specific activity in there, but it was a scavenger hunt of, try to finding other people with the same likes as you, and that might not be applicable, for all populations, but of course, probably for adolescents to, as mentioned before, see that other people are the same as them, that they, have the same struggles and even the same likes and things like that to get them more comfortable in the group. So facilitator debriefing questions. Now session 2, anxiety and what does it mean to me? Again, broken down into what you're going to say, what you're going to do during certain times. And then some of the lesson plans went a little bit further. So when it says to, in the lesson plan, talk about anxiety, it showed us, it kind of gave you like a script of what to say. So what is anxiety? And you could read this and get a basis of, how you would explain it to the individuals in your group. So session 3, disputing irrational thoughts. And again, all these sessions have to do with, going back to that CBT. They're all related, around CBT methods and things like that. The activities that they do, what's discussed. So in some of them, it was given handouts, but I was a little nervous about copyrights and things like that. So I did take out things that were you specifically, I didn't think you were allowed to, put into this. And if there was something that I was able to adapt, I did. So I do just want to bring you to that really quickly. Again, it's very long, it's very in-depth. That's why we're gonna not go over it all today. Of course I can. So I'll just tell you about it. There's an anxiety checklist, and it says, what I'm feeling, and then it went into, you might be feeling, your blood pressure might rise, you might sweat, your cheeks might get red, something like that. And I just kind of gave you guys ideas. So, I wasn't going into exactly what each person was feeling, but just a general way that you could incorporate and make these handouts your own for adolescents with anxiety or social anxiety disorder. So that is pretty much it. Let's go. We got our termination session right here. and then the post-group session. And then that's it. So this article that I got a majority of these this information and these great lesson plans from is right here. So treating social anxiety in adolescents, 10 group therapy lesson plans. So if you have any questions or anything, feel free to reach out to me. If not, have a great summer and a great rest of your semester. Bye, guys.